Hey, is it still morning? I think it's still morning. Morning. So by now, I think everybody would be aware of a couple of things. One, there was a whole distraction yesterday evening by Minister Tupul, and the purpose of the distraction was to have people be focused on HDC houses and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves. Couple of things that need to be contextualized here, or rather that need to be mentioned here. Ralph Gonsalves' family is part Trinidadian. His wife is Trini, and so as a result of that, the children will also be, by virtue of their mother's status, the children will also be Trinidadians. And even if they weren't Trinidadians, there isn't anything in our laws that prevent people who are not citizens of the country to not be able to buy property that is available on the open market. And I'm stressing the whole open market thing because this is not state subsidized housing that they would have purchased. The interesting thing for me is the documents that Anil Roberts would have released into the public domain, or the documents that were released into the public domain, because to be fair, I haven't looked at his life. I don't look at his content. But I was told that there were things released in the public domain. It could have been from him, it could have been from somebody else. But if the documents that I've been shown are the documents that he released, those documents prove that the Gonsalves family paid full market share for the apartments, right? Because it is $1.9 million, that is what I am aware those apartments at a particular level were supposed to cost, because they started at, I think, maybe around 1.4, and when you go the higher up you go, 3.5. Now, I want to talk about the genesis of those apartments briefly. Around 2016, thereabouts, the Prime Minister, then Dr. Rowley, would have talked about those apartments, as well as apartments that they were going to be building in Fort Rose Diego Martin called Shaconia Crescent. And both sets of apartments are pretty close to where I live, so I know the apartments, and I saw the construction and the refurbishing and the renovation and the finishing and whatever else have you. When the PNM got into government in 2015, Victoria Keys was actually completed under the Manning administration, or at least part of it was completed under the Manning administration. Then, under the UNC administration that came thereafter, there were renovations done. So, an apartment complex that was meant to be low to middle income housing, that was supposed to cost the Treasury about $200 million, went up by almost 400, because I think when they finished it, it was about maybe about $250 million to when it was completed under the Manning administration. Then when the renovations took place, it cost a further $350 million to do the renovations. So the renovations to the apartment complex, or the blocks of apartments, cost more than it took to build the apartments, right? So that's something that's important. And the reason I'm talking about it and talking about why it's important is because of who the renovations happened under. So, 200 million, between 200 to 250 million. I don't have the flat figure, but it's between that to build the apartments. And the apartments, as you all know, right next to Powder Magazine, but they didn't have the Powder Magazine name. They got a different name, Victoria Keys. And when the apartments were renovated, it cost more to renovate than to finish the apartments. And that's because when the apartments were renovated, it was because the then regime, who now was in control of construction and renovation of state housing, decided that they wanted to make Victoria Keys be luxury apartments, not low and middle income housing. And that's when they split up the apartments from them being 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom things for families to being luxury penthouse apartments and luxury studio apartments and just basically luxury apartments. And so the entire thing was renovated and revamped, and I think it was about $350 million spent on that. So overall, Victoria Keys apartments, which was supposed to cost the Treasury about $200 million, end up costing the Treasury over $600 million to build. You could go and check Randall Mitchell's post of this morning, because Randall gives a nice breakdown of figures and the process and whatever else have you. You know who was in charge of HDC and housing at that point in time, when it went from 200 million to 600 and something million? Rudal Munilal was the Minister of Housing. And Julian John, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, was in charge of the HDC. So it is under their tenure, their management, their remit, that this cost of Victoria Keys skyrocketed from 200 million to 600 and something million. Jump forward now to 2015-2016. PNM comes into government, discovers the new cost per square footage of the real estate there at Victoria Keys, and they decide, you know what? The average man and woman cannot afford to buy these apartments. This is no longer low-income housing. What does the government then do? They take a cabinet decision that what they're going to do is put those apartments on the open market for anybody who could afford to buy. And that's what took place. It went on the open market. I remember, sorry about the phone jerking, mosquitoes killing me here. I remember when there was the launch of the whole real estate project to do with being able to purchase the apartments, because it was done publicly. There was a live stream of it. If you were at the event, you had the opportunity to do a walkthrough to the various they did some model apartments, like they set up some of the apartments and suites inside there for you to be able to see what it was like as a living space. And I had swung through. I didn't stay for very long, but I swung through the event, stood up on the outskirts, and some of the people who were responsible for the management of the event allowed me to take a look at one of the apartments. So I remember it's either 2016, 2017, somewhere thereabouts, when it was put on the market, and the proceeds from that went straight back to the HDC, right? It still have apartments inside Victoria Keys available for sale. There are still apartments in Victoria Keys available for sale. So everybody who complaining and saying, oh look, Ralph Gonsalves get house and we can't get housing, you could go and put in your application. But what I find interesting about Anil's announcements, or the announcements coming out of the government, is one, the timing. We're 2 weeks away from a St. Vincent and the Grenadine general elections. So I have questions. Is our government trying to influence the general elections of another government? Are we attempting to interfere with the general elections of another government? And Anil have all of these people personal banking and home purchasing information to put out into the public domain. We can't get a housing policy yet. Nobody could get a list of the available properties that they could apply for yet. Nothing like that is being put into the public domain for people. But we could put the information of Trinidad citizens. Because let me don't forget, jump high, jump low. Mrs. Gonsalves and her children are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So we have a government minister who has access to sensitive information, people purchasing of homes under his remit, and he abuses his power by gathering those documents and doxing people. Don't let me get it twisted here. He abused his power, used information that is directly under his remit within the Ministry of Housing. That is if he is still a minister inside the ministry, right? Because the last I heard is he's a junior minister inside the Ministry of Housing. So if he is there as a junior minister inside the Ministry of Housing and he has access to this information, he has abused his power to a legitimate purchase of property and put people business out into the public domain. And Kamla Prasad Basesa, mute over the fact that one of her ministers has abused his access to information inside his line ministry and laid bare the personal and financial information of a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. You all need to pay attention to that. That's a serious issue. That a line minister, somebody who inside of a ministry, based on what we would have seen earlier on in the year in terms of swearing in, you there as a line minister, and you use information that you have access to lay bare. And it is not even a situation where you can point to actual wrongdoing, actual corruption, actual malfeasance. You basically put documents out into the public domain to say, hey, these people bought a house at market value. And you did it 2 weeks before a general elections due in their country. All your picks and some nonsense. Enjoy a lady.